Welcome to the Lampstand Chronicles. I'm your host, Rocky. Now, this is a very special episode for a few reasons. Number one, it's our first episode. I'm so happy, y'all. And two, I'm excited to share who my first guest is. I had the pleasure of speaking with my good friend Tep, creator of Less Music, which is based out of the UK. I've been fortunate enough to know Tep for the past few years, and you know those friends that you have where you may not talk all the time, but when you do talk, it's like an hour, 2-hour conversation, but it feels like 5 minutes. Yeah, Tep is one of those friends. Now, for those who don't know, Blessed is an online music platform that is dedicated to featuring music from artists who are bold about their faith. Blessed is also committed to seeking heavenly sounds and forever being Christ-inspired. I love that. Tep and I not only had a chance to talk about how Blessed came to be, but also Tep shared his powerful testimony that I know without a doubt will encourage you. But like any story, we have to go back to the beginning. So let's go.
I'm definitely taking us back to maybe the year of 2009, to be honest. How all of this started, really, just my walk with the Lord. Or at the time, not really my walk with the Lord, but more so just my disobedience. And I just remember, not even obviously, I grew up in a Christian household, and I was very much a Christian by label. I kind of lived vicariously through my parents and their faith. It was a case of me just going to church as a routine, almost religious obligation, as opposed to just authentic relationship with the Lord. So I was just doing that for so long. I was going to church. I knew about who Jesus was, but I didn't necessarily know just the enormity of what Jesus did on the cross, nor did I think that I was a bad person, especially when comparing it to society's almost standard of what's good and bad. I thought I fell very much in the portion of being a good person. So
the standard is different, right?
Right.
The standard that we say in the world, as opposed to the standard of being saved, living for Jesus. It's a vast standard.
Absolutely. I mean, it's God's standard, and it's perfect. And when you look at it, you really start to realize how watered down the world standard is, really. So, I mean, that's how you can be deceived into thinking that you are a good person, right? It was really just a case of just being disobedient in that sense. But I take us back specifically to 2009 because that's when I went into boarding school. So my parents and my family and I, we always moved around because of my dad's business, etc. We ended up moving to London. So I'm originally from South Africa, Cape Town. And we moved to London.
That's a big jump, by the way.
Absolutely. I mean, we had been traveling so much as a family that it wasn't too much of a big deal. But moving to London, especially around then, I was in my 12, 13, 14 years. So I had moved into London. I had got accepted into a boarding school, and I was a weekly boarder there. So I'd always go home on the weekends. And there was one weekend when my mom came and asked my brother and I to come downstairs. We sat down and she told us that our family were going to be moving to Kenya. And I remember thinking, like, you're joking, because we've been moving so much. I thought, there's no chance that she could be telling us we're moving again, especially because we had been in London at the time for maybe 2 years. So she told us we'd be moving to Kenya. And I remember I was almost laughing, thinking she was joking. And then I realized very quickly that she was telling the truth. And the laughter slowly turned into tears. And I think the biggest thing for me at the time was just being frustrated as a kid and not having that kind of strong foundation, not being able to build those strong foundations with friends, and just knowing at the back of my mind that there was always going to be a chance of us leaving. So I remember I sat down and I told my parents, you know what, guys, like, especially coming towards like my high school days, it's so important to have a stable kind of education. You don't want too much fluctuation. You're going into different countries, different systems. When university is the goal, you want something a bit more stable, right?
Right.
So I remember just talking to my parents, and I was just like, guys, like, I'm not gonna go with you guys. Like, I want to stay here. I want to be a full-time boarder at my boarding school, and I'll come and visit you guys during the holidays. And my parents were okay with it. I think my mom was a bit more reluctant because mothers don't ever really want to be separated from their children. So yeah, it was definitely a big step for me to really just commit to being a full-time boarder. And at the time, I was 14 years old, having to hop on planes by myself and just travel to wherever my parents may have been at the time.
See, a 14-year-old me would have never ever gone to my parents and be like, I'm okay on my own.
Right.
Can you just leave me where I'm at?
Right.
The 14-year-old me would have been like, wherever you go, I go.
You know
So
what?
I feel like in that you were being prepared, and God was, even at that point, you didn't know,
Yeah,
but God was preparing you to stand on your own and to,
absolutely.
Was training you for the next chapter that was about to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And what was so funny is that, initially I go in with that kind of mentality, but, I didn't really understand the practicalities of, foregoing that option to be with my parents, right? So I remember just being in school and, during the weekends when most people would go home, where I used to go home, I had to stay at school. And I remember just like, it took a toll on me mentally, just having to stay at school, not have a home anymore, and not know that your parents are around the corner. At the time, emails. I mean, phone calls, yes, but I mean, it was more so international phone calls that you'd have to make. WhatsApp call wasn't
It
really a
wasn't
thing.
a
Yeah,
thing, okay?
exactly,
Like,
right.
so I'm not sure if people remember, but before you'd have to buy calling cards
Right,
to
exactly.
phone long distance. You couldn't just hop on your phone. And at that point, everyone wasn't connected to Wi-Fi.
No,
So you had to go
no.
to a store, buy a calling card to phone
Precisely.
family. So times have
Precisely. Yeah,
changed, very
times
much
have
so.
changed drastically, and that's what it was. So for the most part, we contacted each other via email. But my parents and I always made a point to contact one another every single weekend. So there was always that communication. That I didn't feel like there wasn't communication between my parents and I. And then obviously during the holidays, I would go back to where they were staying at the time, Kenya, and spend time with them. But as much as it was hard for me to be away from them, I also realized that in hindsight now that there was a large degree of freedom that was given to me at such a young age, and like I said, I was living. I was living contrary to my faith. I was very much a man or a young child of the world. So I found myself always, going to other people's houses to go to parties to get drunk. Because here in London, the drinking culture is big. So kids are drinking at the youngest ages of like 12, 13, 14, and the parents themselves are actually almost embracing the fact that this is the case. So parents will actually go and buy alcohol for the kids for them to go out. So again, like I just found myself, being exposed to that. I found myself, going to various houses, going to various parties, just living very recklessly, but also living a secret life that my parents didn't know of at all. Because I mean, I've always been in their eyes a very kind of obedient child, very kind of straightforward. But it was very easy to hide those things because I was so far away from them.
Right.
So that's how I was living for. So high school here in London in the UK is 5 years. So that's how I was living for pretty much like all of those 5 years. And then towards the final year, my friends. So in a boarding house, you start to realize that after the 5 years, you these people become family. The brothers that you are in that boarding house with, you've been with since, actually, before I even went to the boarding house, we were in primary school together, and we all went to the
Wow.
same school, to the same boarding
So
house.
there's a strong foundation
Right.
there that's been
Absolutely.
built over time. Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. And it wasn't a case of they do something and I don't do something. It's a case of we do something, or we do this. This is what we do.
The team,
Right.
the
Exactly.
collective team. Yeah.
Collective team, group mentality, etc. So there was a natural progression towards doing things like weed and smoking. And I remember initially thinking that, I would never smoke because I just always knew that it was very detrimental to one's health. You think back to biology class and what a healthy lung looks like and what a non-healthy lung looks like. And
The
I
very
was
stark visual
right,
that they show
exactly.
you.
With all the motion and the limited breathing, etc. So I always knew I wouldn't,
Yes.
but you know, my friends, these brothers of mine, started to transition towards smoking weed, and there was always almost justification for it because these things were legal in other countries. It was a case of maybe just the UK being too, I don't know, too strict about their regulations. So there was definitely an air of rebelliousness in all that we were doing in that space. But that's what it was towards the end of my high school year. And then, naturally we all go to university. So I actually went to Swansea University in Wales, and I studied law for 3 years. I did my
So
undergraduate in law. Yeah,
to jump in,
sure.
what made you decide to study law? Was that
Right.
something that you always wanted to do, or it just came as a way of, in high school and leading up to post-secondary, you take a lot of different courses. So how did law
Right.
come into your horizon?
Very good question. So for me, I I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest. Going into university,
Like many of us.
right? Exactly. But going into university, and I think it's very different from maybe Americans because from what I know about their system, I don't know about what you guys have in Canada, but it's a case of you go to university, you do all of these different subjects, and then you kind of major in a specific subject. But here in the UK, it's a case of deciding your career at the age of maybe you start thinking about it at the age of 16, and then 17 you're really just taking action. So for me, like, I was just more interested in just passing exams, like, let alone trying to kind of craft what I wanted to do with my life. But come the end of high school, I didn't, or no, come that period of actually having to make the decision, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I really just sat down with my parents. My parents were so invested in really just guiding me towards what would be best for me. And I really just put it into their hands. So I remember I took all of these aptitude tests, or all of these tests that would help kind of craft the career for you, or the best career for you and your personality. I remember I sat in a room for maybe like 3-4 hours doing a series of tests, trying to pick out the best kind of careers. And I think I always knew in my heart that I just wanted to help people. Very, very vague, but as I started doing these kind of tests with my desire to help, and also with the practicality and the security of doing law, my parents really just led me towards an idea of potentially picking law, especially because, no matter what happened in the world, everyone's going to need a lawyer. It's not a case where there's a lot of fluctuation and technology can come and overtake an industry, but it's more so, like, lawyers are irreplaceable as far as we can see right now. I don't know about
Very
technology.
secure.
Right.
I think there's 3 areas to where professions, like, there's a sense of it being secure.
Mm.
I think one of them is law.
Yeah.
because people will always sue each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Second is accounting. You will
Yeah,
always have to pay taxes.
true.
And three is being a doctor.
Doctor,
You
right?
will
Yeah.
always get sick. So you picked a good one.
Right. So, I mean, there was a lot of, it made sense to me. And at the time, again, not necessarily knowing what I wanted to, I think at the time, I actually wanted to get into business management, etc. But I mean, that's very generic, especially here where there's just so many universities. It's even more competitive, and going into business is very vague. You don't know specifically what you want to get into. It almost feels like a throwaway in this country, at least. So
Interesting.
yeah, so I mean, unless I wanted, and then I was thinking specifically marketing, but again, like I feel like these things are things that you can definitely pick up in many different fields. So I guess law was really just an opportunity for me to, just to have that kind of security, work towards something. And at the same time, it's never bad to be proficient in the law, right? In fact, it's always an advantage.
Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, I ended up, I studied at Swansea University in Wales. So I did my undergraduate, which was 3 years. And in the first year, we have what's called Freshers Week. And I was telling you about this earlier, but it was just a case of, the first year being a write-off in all universities everywhere because they didn't count towards any kind of grades. It was more so just a test of can you handle university before things
Right.
get serious in the second and third year. So they actually have what's known as Freshers Week, which is a week dedicated to drinking and partying. And I kind of wondered how the university was able to just operate in that
Promote
space.
that.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it's very much a British thing. So,
Wow.
yeah, they're the ones providing the student unions who host all of these parties, etc. So it's literally just 7 days of just continuous drinking and partying before you transition into actually getting into the work. But actually, throughout there, they have induction classes. But you can imagine the amount of people who don't show up
Right. Because
because
they're
of
nursing a
right,
hangover,
exactly,
probably.
exactly, and they have
Right.
such a thing called the freshers flu that everyone gets after that, after that week, etc. So, so again, like just being a man of the world, I fully indulged, and I actually indulged that whole entire year. Um, I was in the clubs. I was just like I consider myself to be an athlete at the time. I wasn't working out. I wasn't running. I wasn't doing anything. I was just ruining myself. And in between, so throughout the year, I would go back to my parents had now moved to South Africa at the time, and I would go back to South Africa during the holidays, and I'd always kind of I'd always make it a point to almost detour to London and spend time with those friends before I went back to South Africa. And at the time, they had made the drinking and smoking culture literally a lifestyle. So, I'd go there and it would be a pocket of a moment of me almost just indulging throughout completely and then going back home and then coming back, going to London and then going back to university. So I'd always kind of make sure to stop by. And again, these people were the people I grew up with. These people were my brothers. I didn't know any better. I felt uncomfortable at times, just knowing that this wasn't necessarily me. But again, it wasn't a me situation; it was a us situation. So,
Right.
That's what it was for a while up until the end of my first year. I was just prepping for exams. This is around summertime, so for those who don't know, the May June period, we have like summer final year exams. I was just prepping for an exam, and I thought, it's been a while since I've been exercising, so might as well just go out for a run. And I went out for a run, and after 5 minutes, I felt like my lungs wanted to collapse. So,
Which, having been an athlete,
right,
that must have been a shocking experience
I'm telling you,
because your body is telling you something is not right. What you've
Exactly.
been doing, you cannot continue long
No,
term. So can
no.
you talk about that experience in and of itself?
Exactly that. So it was a case of, in that moment, I remember being so perplexed, so shocked, and the enormity of what I had been doing to myself really just hit me. And then I was having flashbacks about biology class, and these are what lungs look like. And I thought about my own lungs, and I was thinking, all this time, like on the outside, you're doing all of these things, but I don't know what's going on in the inside. And this moment is very much an indication of what is the repercussions of what I've been doing, right? So I remember I was in a panic because I felt like I was almost a foreigner in my own body. So I remember I panicked. I went back to my flat that I was staying in, and I was feeling shortness of breath. So I remember I went to the bathroom and I started coughing, and I ended up coughing out blood. So I mean, that in and of itself was incredibly scary. But of course, as we all do, you go straight to Google and try to self-diagnose yourself, right?
Which is the worst
Right.
possible thing to do.
Of course. We always know that. In fact, some people might even give that advice to other people. But when you're in the moment, you
Don't
just
do
want to
it.
know. Right. Exactly. You don't do it, and you just want to know. You're so
Yeah.
curious. You find you just down the loophole. And I was actually convinced that I had lung cancer. Um, and I, so it was tough. So this was actually just before I was supposed to go into an exam. But, I had experienced all of that, and I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to go into this exam. And then afterwards, I'm going to go to the university doctor and just get everything checked out. So I did my exam, went to the doctor, and he asked me, one of the first questions he asked me was whether or not I was a smoker. Now, for me, I never considered myself to be a smoker, only because it was never habitual. It was a case of just socially doing those things whenever I was with people. And also, I never wanted him to have a biased opinion on what my lungs actually looked like. I wanted him to tell me objectively, either you've been lying to me, your lungs actually look like this, or whatever. So I was willing to kind of omit the information for real truth. Um, so I thought, but either way, it would have been the same result. So he asked me. I told him no. He asked me to go get some X-rays done on my lungs. So I got them done, and they told me that it would take a week. Now, for me, you know, think about it. Like someone who's convinced that they have lung cancer, to have to wait a week,
7 days
7 days
of thinking
of
the
thinking.
worst possibility is
Exactly.
occurring.
Exactly. And I'm so like introspective. Like trust me, I was thinking. And I remember like those had to have been my darkest days, because I just remember, you know, calling up, those hotlines of
Hmm.
those cancer hotlines. I remember just calling up the people.
Information
Right,
hotlines.
information
Yeah.
hotlines. I remember just calling them up. I kind of explained my situation to a lady on the phone, and she can only do so much. Like, in fact, the
She
information,
doesn't know you.
she
She
doesn't know
hasn't seen
me.
you
She hasn't seen
before.
my medical records. I've told her about my
Right.
experiences, but I just realized that I needed someone to talk to.
Mm.
And I had flatmates. Like, no one had any kind of idea that I was going through what I was going through. I was very, very, very good at hiding things like that. So I just remember just being in my bed and crying out to the Lord for the first time. And to be honest, for the first time, crying out to the Lord, like, Lord, please just help me. Please get me through this. And I remember I almost I put a condition on the Lord, and I was like, if you do this, then I will follow you. And
The strong arm prayer.
right, of course, right. And so I remember, yeah, just crying out. Then fast forward, come the seventh day, I'm actually on a run, and I get interrupted by a phone call from the receptionist, and she tells me that the doctor has seen my results. So yeah, she kind of reads it out, and she says that the doctor has found that there is nothing out of the ordinary. And I'm thinking,
Relief.
right, I'm thinking, are you sure? And I remember I was just like, please, like, just check it again, like, check it again. Like, maybe you read the wrong scans or something, because I don't know, I feel something.
Do you think it would be easier for you to have known that it was an external force, i.e., a sickness that you would have had to dealt with later on, versus just dealing with the fact that what you were doing wasn't what you were supposed to be doing? Because I feel like sometimes we want to deal with, like, for example, the sickness because it's go to the doctor, if you need to treatment, you take treatment. Everything is kind of already pre-laid out for you.
Right.
But when it's looking internally and having to deal with decisions that we've made, sometimes it's a lot harder for us to face that fact.
That's a very good question. I think it's definitely a case of almost, I wouldn't even say it's a case of accepting the reality of having had whatever kind of cancer, because I never wanted that period. I don't think I could ever accept that reality. But at the same time, there was definitely an aspect of not wanting to, I think even more so, I think in that moment, I had really and truly realized that I can't be doing this anymore. Like, even if they'd like, I think, irrespective of what they told me, I realized that, especially because of the enormity of what I had done, I had just been living in dreamland. And then I got kind of brought back to reality of, this is what you've done. So I don't think I don't see a reality. Later on in the story, you kind of understand just what really happened. But I don't know that I could have just coped. I don't know that I could have coped with the fact, with any kind of cancer, period.
Right. That's a heavy weight. I mean, if we're being completely honest, that's a heavy weight to think about when you're young, you're in school, you have your whole life ahead of you.
Right.
And to deal with that
Right.
on top of everything else, that's a heavy weight to carry.
Exactly. Especially when it's self-inflicted. I think that was the craziest thing for me. It was, I have done this to myself. Had I gone another path, had I been surrounded by the right people, had I opted to go to church and just surrounded myself with the right types of people in my life, like, all of this could have been avoided, right?
So in this time, were you connected to anyone from your church in this time?
No.
Or it was a complete separation?
Complete separation.
Like, you weren't even trying to fake it. It was just
complete separation.
Complete separation. Okay.
At my churches back home, in South Africa, etc., like, I would just be in the congregation, I'd fall asleep, and then I'd leave. I would. It's not even a case of wanting to talk to people. I didn't know. Bear in mind, we had been at that church since I was a child. Like, I remember being in Sunday school. Right. Yeah. And because we had been moving a lot and then we came back to South Africa, I was now a young adult in church. I wasn't interested in youth groups, etc. Just go to the sermon, fall asleep, wake up, leave.
In and out.
Right. Exactly. So I had no Christian friends, to be honest, at that time. And at the same time, like, at university, I wasn't plugged into any student unions or any churches, etc. So completely separate. But yeah, so the receptionist told me that. Of course, I'm very joyous, and I did what most people do in those kind of situations where, when your back's against the wall, you cry out to the Lord. But the moment that the situation is over or has subsided, then you walk right on by like it never happened.
Yeah, or as if there was no higher power that interceded for you at that time.
Exactly.
And it's just business as normal, life as normal.
Exactly. I'm good to go. Okay, great. Completely forgot.
On to the next thing.
Exactly. And yeah, so come summertime, I'm still kind of just living like I was, finished up my exams, and then went to South Africa for the summer period. So this is June, July, August time, and this is specifically in 2015. 2015. So yeah, I go back to South Africa for the summer holidays, and I remember I had just crazy a crazy sense of anxiety, and I had panic attacks every single night. Now, I'd never had panic attacks in my life. In fact, I was one of those people. When you speak about panic attacks, it's a case of just calm down. It's not that deep. It's not as bad as you think it is, etc. Until you experience panic attacks yourself. I honestly felt like my heart was going to give in at any time, and that if I was actually scared to go to sleep because I thought that I wouldn't wake up. So I was just going through a series of panic attacks for such a long time during that summer period. And for me, like I said, church for me was very much just a tick the box type of situation. I would and I felt even more obliged to go to church because I had been separated from family for so long. It's the least I could do for my parents, right? So I thought, and there was one Sunday where I had finished up a morning service, and my parents had gone to a lunch with some family friends, and they have a son who's my age. His name's Mike. So I didn't go with them. My mom comes back and she knocks on my door and she says, there's this guy, Mike, who was wondering whether or not you'd like to come to his evening service. So in my mind, I'm thinking, like, why would my mom ask me to go to another service? Like, why would I do a double shift of church?
I already went
right,
Sunday
exactly,
morning.
right? I already ticked that box. Like, why would I be putting in after hours work type of situation, right? And I remember, like, I was so convinced that I wasn't going to go, but I thought, you know what? The least I could do is make her think that I'm thinking about it. And then towards the end of the day, I'll just tell her I don't want to go. So throughout the day, completely convinced that I wasn't going to go. And just as I was gearing up, it was maybe about 5. Let's say it started at like 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. I was maybe about 5:30. I was kind of getting ready to go tell her that I wasn't going to go. And just before I was leaving the room, I just felt the Lord just tell me to go. And I remember it was so clear, and I just felt myself just walk to my mom's room and tell her that, Mom, I guess I'm going. And
do you think she was surprised, or
I think she was
more
surprised
that you said, I'm actually going?
I think both, but she didn't show that she was surprised at the time. But later on, you'll find out. You'll find out why this was important to her. But so my friend Mike, he came to pick me up. We drove to the church, and I remember just walking through those doors. And as soon as I walked through the doors, I was just enveloped by the Holy Spirit. It was such an incredible feeling. It was such an overwhelming feeling. I remember just sitting down, listening to the pastor, listening to the sermon, and everything was just making sense. And I remember, like, I was just so inquisitive about it. And yeah, I just felt incredible, and I was just listening to it. All these things were matching up. And I go back to my mom at the end of the service, and I'm just like, Mom, like, I'm feeling this way. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what this is like. And she just said, you know what? Like, throughout the whole entire day, I was just praying that you would go. And I'm just like, thank the Lord, thank the Lord, thank moms
a praying mother,
right,
who just works behind the scenes.
Come on.
That we don't even know that they are already seeing ahead of us.
Exactly.
And they're praying into that.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, a praying mother.
Please, everyone, every child, appreciate what your mother does, behind the scenes, because, I honestly really and truly just thank the Lord for that. I thank I thank the Lord for my mom, and for her prayers in that situation, or in every situation, to be honest. So actually, it was after that moment that the panic attacks completely left. I've never had a panic attack since, and it was
Amen.
crazy. Like, honestly, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. And I remember just telling myself, it was getting towards the end of the summer, and I just told myself, you know what, um, when I leave here to go back to university, I'm not taking any detours into London. I'm not letting people know that I'm even around. I'm just going straight to university. And the first thing I need to do is get in touch with Christian unions, Christian
Mm.
societies, and find a good church and get to know about Jesus. So that's exactly what I did. I went straight to university, got connected to the Christian Union. They have incredible links to churches that were local to me. And then I just got myself plugged into an incredible church, learned about the gospel, learned about Jesus, and then got baptized.
For
And
yourself, which
right.
is probably the most important thing that I think a lot of new believers can probably, take note of, is that
Mm.
when God opens your eyes for the first time, that you have such a hunger and thirst for him, that it's
Mm.
like the only thing you want to do
Right.
is seek him,
Right.
know about him, begin to cultivate that relationship
Mm.
of knowing God for yourself.
Precisely.
And it's probably the sweetest time I've ever
Mm.
had in God's presence, honestly,
Absolutely.
when that hunger and thirst, like, it almost is to the point where it cannot be satisfied, because God is so big
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
he is all knowing, and
Mm.
there's nuances to him, there's levels and layers, and
Oh,
when you begin to experience that for
oh
yourself,
man.
you can stay in his presence forever.
It's so true. And a lot of the times I see Christians, like, who have been Christians for years, really just want to go back to those moments, right? Those moments of just, yeah, just being so inquisitive, being so thirsty, being so hungry for the word. Um, and yeah, that's what it was. Honestly, I was so full steam ahead, and it was so important for me to also just be surrounded by people who were
Mm.
not lukewarm about their faith, people who were really who just stood on strong, firm foundations.
And
Um,
those who will encourage you as
mm,
well, coming into an an it's not to say it's a new faith,
mm,
but it's a new journey
yeah,
into your faith where it is personal,
mm,
and having people that will encourage you, having people that will edify you, having
yeah,
people that will speak positivity into your life is so integral in that
right,
whole process. So the fact that you made that decision to, open yourself up to being around those type of people and wanting, those type of people around
mm,
you is so important. I can't stress how
mm,
important it is to have people who will walk alongside with you. We are not meant to be alone
right.
and
No,
travail
not at all,
alone and try to figure it out
not
by
at all.
ourselves. It's all about the body, right?
Absolutely,
Because we are
absolutely.
a body. So
Come on.
that is so, so, so important. We
Yeah,
can't stress that.
absolutely. Honestly, praise the Lord. Yeah, just seeing where I once was and where I was headed, to be honest, and how Jesus took me from that, is just, yeah, nothing short of a blessing, to be honest. Yeah, and what was great was that, actually, so I had the baptism at the church, and my dad happened to be on a business trip to London, so he actually made the journey to come to watch me get baptized, etc.
I
So
love that.
right, so it was such a moment, for me, for the family, um, yeah, and that's, I never look back, to be honest.
Amen. How
Even
does
though,
bless work into
oh
your
man.
testimony of doing what you wanted to do with your friends to God opening your eyes and saying, this is not what I've called you to do? How does bless work, or how does bless be placed into this?
Sure. So I think, so the biggest thing, so let me just explain my relationship with music. Firstly, I've always been the type of person who loves music, just like I'm sure
You're
everyone
preaching my
does, right?
language right
Yeah,
now.
you know. And the thing is with me is like, because of my traveling, I grew up around different communities. I grew up around different genres of music. But also my father had a very eclectic taste in music. He was never just a 1, 2, 3 genre person. He introduced us to the likes of, Josh Groban on one side, to like a John Mayer, to like a Chris Brown, to like a Neo, to like, and bear in mind, like as a child, I grew up listening to, at the time I was listening to stuff like Green Day. I was listening to, like, I grew up around so many different kinds of music. And so I've always had an eclectic taste, and I learned to really just appreciate the art of music more so than just genres in and of themselves, right? So, um, I always had this passion for discovering music and then sharing it with people, and I always loved to see the reactions of people having introduced them to music, right?
Exactly.
That same,
When they have like the shining eyes,
yes, right.
the reaction, the ooh, like that
Like who
beat
is this? Like what
or
song
that
is this?
hook.
Right.
Exactly. Like that same, awe and wonder.
Right,
I've always
exactly.
had
You know.
that same thing as well.
Exactly. So, I mean, I've always been that type of person. I've always been the quote unquote plug for my friends to discover new artists, new music, etc. And I think at the time it was very, no, not even then. Like, I've always wanted to dip into not even so much genres that were different, but also just like independent music, artists that you had literally never heard of. And at the
The
time, like,
underground artists.
exactly. And at the time, it's usually, you were usually kind of fed what the mainstream would push towards you,
Hmm.
and that would be all. You wouldn't really, especially at that time, like, you wouldn't really go out looking for independent musicians. You'd almost have your specific music that you liked, and people who existed in that genres, and you'd wait for them to kind of drop new music, right?
Right.
Um,
And even thinking back then, I mean, the music landscape has changed so much.
yeah.
Now it's just a matter of a click here and a
Oh
click
yeah.
there, and you have, unlimited music at your fingertips,
Exactly, and it's all in front
as
of your
opposed
face.
to
Like, you don't have
exactly.
to look.
You didn't have to look very
No.
far or look very hard,
Mm,
as opposed to, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, the music landscape was very different,
yeah.
especially for independent artists. Like, you
Mm,
really had to be a fan,
yeah,
and you really had
for
to
sure.
search and know where to search as well for
Exactly.
those independent artists.
Precisely. That's exactly what it was. But I loved it. I felt like it was a sport. Like, it was something I loved doing in my spare time. And what's so funny is, also bear in mind, like, I'm doing law at the time, and in my mind, I always knew that I wanted to work in the music industry, and that's actually part of the reason why I got into law or committed to law, because my parents told me that, you know what, you could still get into the music industry through becoming an entertainment lawyer. So you could still be exposed to all of these different artists, etc., but you would just be, I guess, representing them in that space. So in my mind, I always knew that I wanted to get into the music industry. I just didn't know how. But also, searching for the music was an opportunity for me to, really just have a time away, time separated from the things that were kind of just happening in my life. The fact that, law was so rigorous in and of itself. searching for music and finding new music was just an escape from that, an opportunity for me to rest in that space. So um, I remember, like, I was just so fed up with charts music. I was so fed up with, well, what the record labels were feeding us. I knew that there was so much more. So I used to just dip into SoundCloud. And I'm sure for a lot of people know of it. Some people struggle to navigate it. It's not user friendly. You really have to go out and do like the dirty
Manual
work.
labor.
Exactly, yeah, manual labor to really get the kind of gems that you're looking for. It's literally digging for gems. So that's what I used to do. I used to just do that. I used to introduce my friends to a whole bunch of different kinds of music. And at the time, going into, so this was school, going into university, it was very much in the secular space. Um, and, after I was saved, there was a huge conflict in my heart um, between the music that the God that I loved and the music that I enjoyed. I started to realize that, as the Lord was transforming me, um, my 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 desire to listen to the music wasn't necessarily there all the way. I started to really think about the themes that these people were singing or rapping about, and they were just so contrary to to the God that I served. And I realized I was in this conflict
Mm,
of wanting to serve the Lord yet still indulge in what I thought was good music, right?
right.
And I remember, just this is like 2017. So my idea or my perspective of YouTube was, it was a platform for me to just maybe watch a couple of videos here and there, and then I'm off. Like, I didn't really know too much about it. I didn't know what went into the channel perspective of things, but someone who gave me clarity on what actually existed in that space was my brother. So
Mm.
my brother, he at the time he must have been, if this was 2017, he must have been maybe 12 years old, somewhere around there, 11, 12. And he had actually created his own YouTube channel, and he was doing football compilation videos. And one of his, I knew he'd been working on it for a while. I kind of just separated myself from it. I thought, that's a cool thing that he's getting done. He showed me a couple of edits that he was doing. That was great. But I wasn't really interested. I'm not a football fan myself. I'm an American football fan, but as in soccer football here in the UK, I'm
Hmm.
very not much about that culture at all. So I was very detached from all of that. But there was one day when my brother came to me and he told me that um, that one of his videos actually went viral,
Mm.
and it was trending in Norway. And I thought, man, that's crazy, because at the time, like, trending wasn't a thing. Like, it
No
was
one
still
knew
fairly
what
new,
that
right?
meant.
Exactly. No one knew what, like, trending was very much a new kind of, yeah, section of YouTube that had
Hmm.
emerged. So I remember just seeing it trending, and we went onto YouTube Norway, and we saw the video trending. It was crazy, and I was just like, man, this is like my 12-year-old brother who just edited a video here and there, and it's being seen by all of these people. And I don't know. I think it was just because this was April 2017, and this was like the Easter holidays. I was back in Cape Town, getting ready to prepare for my summer exams, and I remember just thinking, like, what do I have a passion for? And I always knew that, like, in the YouTube space, the format of like independent music being kind of shown to a niche group of people who were looking for something different was always there through like platforms like I don't know if you know, like Majestic Casual. I think there was like Mr. Suicide Sheep, or like a whole bunch of platforms at the time that were doing it, but doing it in the secular space. So I always knew about it in the back of my mind. It was just a case of not really being too invested. So I asked myself, what am I passionate about? And it was, finding music and just sharing it with people. And at the time, yeah, I was just doing law. It was super rigorous. I was already searching for music on SoundCloud anyway. So I thought, you know what, let me just create a channel and just share the music that I had found. Now, at the time, the channel was not blessed. It was under another name.
Can you share what that name is?
So, man. All right. So the name of the channel was Sliders and Coffee, right? Now, let me
Not gonna lie, that's a very interesting name.
right, yeah, very interesting. Sliders being like slip-on shoes, like beach shoes
Mm,
type of vibe. And coffee, I really wanted to kind of just perpetuate or just portray that chill kind of laid back vibe, right?
right.
At the time, it was just on a limb. There wasn't too much thought in the name itself, but I thought, you know what, let me just do it. My brother helped me out with all of the kind of specifics of how to, establish a YouTube channel, etc. And I started the channel. And I remember I had everything set up during the day, and by the evening, I had posted a couple of songs. And bear in mind, I hadn't asked these artists to use the songs. I just posted the songs. I didn't even know the formalities of doing these things.
Right.
I just thought, okay, I found songs. Let me just post it up. But I had done it, and I remember like that evening after my brother had helped me establish the channel, we had gone through all the graphic design for it all. And we had put something kind of cohesive together. And I remember just that evening, the Lord spoke to me very clearly, and He said, "Stop what you're doing and pursue me instead." Now, for me, I really didn't understand what that meant, specifically because, like, my perception of Christian music fell under three categories, right?
Mm.
It was either Christian contemporary music, which is the Hillsong, the Bethels. Now, that was at the time for me, and this is very much coming from a mentality of someone who has just been saved, but at the same time has a very specific, not even specific, but has a broad range of music taste that extends
Exactly.
beyond just that. So I remember just the Bethel and Hillsong. Yeah, that's great for church. That's great for worship. I understood again the sentiment, but it wasn't something that I would listen to in my leisurely time. Right.
Right.
Then there was Christian hip hop, which at the time I knew about. I always knew it was historically corny, right? I say that word because like I felt like in terms of just the sound design and the choice of music, like sounds or beats, etc. It felt very archaic. It felt like they were still stuck in a time period that was not
They
where
didn't progress with the times
they didn't.
or progress where with technology, even
No,
it
no, no, no,
felt
no.
like that. So, yes, I totally get what you understand and have had those exact same feelings as
Yeah,
well.
right, exactly. So that's what it was. That's what it was to me, and it was to me. I thought it was, you know, at the time, wannabe Christians just trying to exist in a hip hop space. But yeah, that was just my thought, and I thought, you know what, I don't enjoy this music. Uh, I wouldn't want to fall into that category. And then the third was just gospel music, the music my
Mm.
parents, my dad would play in the car, the music that I grew up listening to. Although it was great, it wasn't something again that I listened to in my own time. So I was kind of stumped because I was thinking, Lord, this is what I know of Christian music. I don't feel like I fit into any of these categories. What do you want me to do?
Hmm.
So, after just a lot of prayer, the Lord really just led me to combine two things: my love for Him and my love for independent musicians, right? And that led me towards going back to SoundCloud and really doing that. If it was tough enough to find these artists or find artists when I was doing it in a secular space, it was even tougher trying to maneuver the Christian space, right? And find
Right.
music that was edifying, and at the same time sounded good.
Right.
So I remember I would just spend hours and hours and hours, and it didn't feel like work. It was it was fun to kind of navigate that.
That is the biggest difference between when you're working towards your purpose and your destiny. It's
Mm.
not work. It's not,
Mm.
there's no, okay, I have to pick myself up and do
Right.
it. There's
No.
such an, yes, it's work, but there's an ease to it. There's,
Mm.
you just flow. Like, honestly,
Exactly.
you just flow in it because it's so wrapped around in God's presence that you
Mm.
just ease into it.
No, precisely. I mean, that's what it was. And I thought, you know what, like, and when I found some of these songs, like it was honestly just such an incredible moment. And then also just reaching out to these artists, and bear in mind, like I found a lot of music, and I reached out to a lot of musicians. So at this time, actually, after the Lord had told me that, after I realized that, you know what, there was something that actually existed on SoundCloud. I then changed the name of the channel, deleted all the other stuff, and it became Blessed Music, spelled the conventional name,
Intentional
right?
way
The
to
conventional,
ease.
right? Exactly. I'm not illiterate, guys. I know how to spell this thing, but it was spelled the conventional way, and it was Blessed Music for maybe like a month or two. Um, and I remember I was just kind of looking at the name, and I thought, you know what? For searchability reasons, we spoke about this earlier, but for searchability reasons, I never thought that this channel would ever get found. Nor did I really care too much. It was more so just, you know what? I just want to share this with people, and I hope, because I understand that the YouTube space at the time even was very saturated. Like the
Right.
chances of finding a channel were just slim, like to none. And the chances of a channel actually succeeding is slim to none. Um, but I remember I just thought, you know what, let me just take out these E's and see what happens here. And also it has, I don't know, it looked nice at the
It looks
time.
cool. I mean,
Right.
to be honest, and I'm, but also it works so well because the way it's spelled, you know exactly what it means.
Right.
So it
Exactly.
works both ways.
You know, exactly. So that's what it was. So it was. I changed it to Bless Music the way it's spelled now, and I remember just reaching out to artists. And bear in mind, I reached out to a lot of different artists, but a lot of them just didn't reply, didn't respond. And I think it's because, to an extent, like who was I, like what was this platform? I didn't have any leverage. I had little to no subscribers. um you know there were people who just didn't want to give me the time of day.
Mm.
um I guess I can understand it, but at the same time, I get that people are also caught up, etc., etc. So it was never a personal thing, but I really do love and appreciate the people who believed in the vision before anything came about. The
Right.
people who were just like, you know what, I love what you're doing, and that's what it was. It really just transformed into a platform of, me being a lover of music, seeking edifying Christian music and sharing it with people who are also looking for the same thing.
Yeah, because the people who are looking for that same thing and also have a like-minded passion will
Mm,
be able to see past the surface stuff.
mm,
How big is your platform?
yeah,
How many subscribers do you have? Are they going to get any immediate benefit from collaborating
mm,
with you?
yeah,
And when it's Christ-centered, all that surface stuff falls by the wayside. All that
exactly.
surface stuff doesn't matter because it's about,
Mm,
again, building the body of Christ and about
absolutely,
glorifying God. So I feel
absolutely.
like it was very intentional that there were certain people at the time who didn't respond, but the people
Mm,
that did respond had the same purpose and
Yeah,
passion that you did.
for
So
sure.
the moral of the story, I believe, is passion goes such a long way. Passion
Mm,
is what connects people,
for
and
sure.
passion goes so deep because music brings people together, but passion is what I feel like that's where we're all interwoven with each other.
Yeah.
So if someone doesn't respond to you, and I know that you and I have talked about this as well, and
Yeah.
that if someone doesn't respond to you, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. They may respond later, but that's not in God's plan right now. That's
That's
not
it.
his intention for you to come together right now.
That's exactly it. You know, just put it into God's hands. You know, He will order your steps for as long as you let Him. You know.
That's right.
And so that's what it was. And there were a couple of artists who did reach out and they believed in the vision. And the first person to actually submit, and I remember this so clearly because I thought, you know, how did this person even find this channel? Like, I mean, in the midst of all of this
In midst of all
chaos,
the other stuff they could have
exactly all of
found,
this
they
other
came across
stuff,
your
right?
channel.
So the first person to actually submit was Paul the Messenger.
Shout out to Paul the
Shout out
Messenger.
to Paul
Love
the
him.
Messenger.
Yes.
Such an incredible guy and such an incredible godly man. And
Mm,
to see just his growth or what he has now become
yes.
is just incredible. So he was the first person. And I remember just posting up his song and you know, the people I reached out to, they believed in it. And at the time, like because and I think one of the biggest factors was because number one, people believed in what the Lord was doing through, you know, my just my vision, my idea, you know, wanting to just, you know, provide a platform for independent Christian musicians whilst also provide music for people who were just interested. I think because people believed in that, and a lot of the times these artists were had little to no views. Like they
They
weren't
were in a similar situation that
right.
you were,
Yeah.
just doing what God called them to do
Right.
and just putting their music out there for whoever would listen.
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess in their minds, at the same time, they had nothing to lose. If anything, this may just help them, you know. And I think the biggest thing for me as well is that for me, I really wanted to be very interpersonal about it. Like, I really wanted to sit down and hop on like a FaceTime call and really get to know these people beyond just the music, you know.
Right.
So that's what I used to do. I remember just being in law school, like doing my work late nights because of time zones, having to stay up and just get into incredible conversations with all these people who shared the same goal, you know, to glorify God through what they're doing. And I think that's why the conversations became so organic. That's why the
Mm,
conversations became so yeah, just they just flowed and
right.
you know, because we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. We're all doing we all have the same goal, and that we don't deviate from the ultimate goal. So that's why it was so easy to kind of exist in a space of aspiring musicians wanting to just yeah, do things unapologetically for the Lord.
Mm,
So I remember, so I started posting, and one of the biggest things with me is that I've always been the type of person. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Like, actually, you know, I'm not even gonna say master. I don't even like that last bit. I'm just gonna say jack of all trades. Yeah, fairly proficient in
right.
different things, different levels of proficiency. But like, the biggest thing with me is that growing up, I didn't actually embrace that, but more so just embrace the fact that I was always curious about doing different things. So I'd start and stop different things, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And I told myself, you know, if I'm gonna start this channel, I need to give my everything to it. And so I committed for the first time in my life. I committed to really just ensuring that I do this thing.
Mind, body,
Yeah,
soul,
exactly. Mind, body, soul,
everything,
everything. Right?
100% effort.
Exactly. So I remember I told myself, you know what? I'm gonna upload a song every single day for a year. Now, man, when I tell you that was a challenge,
That's a lofty challenge, I will
right?
say.
Oh man, when I tell you it was a challenge,
Challenge
um,
doesn't begin to describe what it was
no,
like.
such an understatement. It was tough. It was tough. It was tough because obviously the music was very scarce at the time, and at the same time, I remember there were days that I missed, and then I had to double upload on the next days, triple
Wow.
upload again. Like I really just wanted to instill just a sense of commitment to what I'm doing for the first time in my life, really. And
Right.
again, it didn't really feel like work because it was just a passion of mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way to be able to escape the rigor of law, and yeah, just get myself back into what I love.
And which I think in that is such a good lesson to learn
Mm,
because, for example, for myself, when I rededicated my life to Christ,
mm,
long story short, grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a pastor as well. So,
mm,
that I've been in it all
right.
my life.
Hmm.
But when I decided to rededicate my life, I made the decision that I am going to be all in, sold out. Like, I'm
Mm,
not going to have even half of a foot out. I'm going to be
mm,
completely in. And I find when I made that decision, and one of the hardest things I had to give up was music, because music was, and there's such an emotional tie to music. Like
yeah,
me
for
and my
sure.
husband were actually talking about this yesterday, the emotional tie that music has, because
Yeah.
we listen to music when we're happy, sad, when we're with people, when
Mm,
we're by ourselves, when we're working, when we're working out. There's
yeah.
so many things that music is integrated into.
Mm,
So when I made that decision, I was like, I have to give up every form of secular music. And it was so difficult. I remember
mhm.
going onto Spotify and just trying to, I literally added everything I came across.
Right.
Everything. Like if you look at my early playlist, it's
Yeah.
like so sporadic, because I was just like, I just need music to listen to,
Mm,
music that will encourage me and still allow me to glorify God, and that
right.
will not distract me from what I'm supposed to do as well.
Mm,
So, like being completely invested in whatever you're doing is important, but being
absolutely.
completely invested in your faith and therefore your purpose
Yeah.
is 100% integral to where God wants to take you and needs to take you as well.
100%. 100%. There were a couple of points that you actually touched on. So yeah, when I actually was saved, when I was newly saved, I did the same thing. I was just like, man, I got to get rid of all of this secular music. So I just filled my playlist of just like a whole bunch of Christian music, which was great music. It is like, especially in hindsight now, I've learned to really just appreciate all those three genres that I thought
Yep.
Christian music fell under. I've learned to really appreciate it. But like at the time, I remember just filling in. I was just had a whole bunch of gospel music, and some songs would hit like and then really just impact me. Other songs just not so much, and I felt like there was always still that conflict. It was a struggle practically, especially whilst studying, um, but also it was a struggle um, mentally. And I think this is something that's super underrated. I don't know if you'll get to speak to other curators, the Gospel Hydration, etc., Good Christian Music blog, but I don't know whether they've even experienced this. But one thing that was very underrated was like mental health in that space. Like I found that, because I was so tunnel vision about this and I was seeking the music, posting the music, seeking the music, posting the music, I felt like I was actually losing relationship with the Lord
Mm.
whilst doing work for the Lord, right?
Which is, it sounds silly, like
Right.
how could that happen? But at the same time, we have to remember that God is our source. So as we spend time with him, as we seek him, as we, just lay at his feet, he then pours into us everything that we need to carry forth our purpose, everything that we need to go out into the world, as the Bible says, to make disciples, to edify the body of Christ. If we don't spend time with him, if we don't find rest in him as well, then we're not going to be able to do our part. We can't do it on our own, and it's not by our own strength. It's all by the strength of God.
Exactly. And I think for me, I've always had a problem with letting go of kind of doing things myself and giving them to God, but also giving it to other people. And I think the biggest thing is, I was just super burnt out. I was losing relationship with the Lord. Part of what I also made sure to include, because I realized also in the Christian space that there was a lot of like omission of like Jesus, or like there was a lot of like inauthenticity to an extent,
Right.
I realized that, a lot of these Christian musicians are also subsidiaries of secular labels. And having spoken to other people, these labels will tell you not to speak about Jesus. You can do your thing, but you can't say the name of Jesus. And I started to realize in the music that things that were considered to be Christian music just wasn't sounding right, spirit-wise. And
There's
I
no
always,
depth to it.
no,
It's
no.
lacking that connection to the Holy Spirit.
Right. And I couldn't tell you whether it's the individuals themselves, whether it's what they've been told in the industry, etc. So I don't know the hearts of them. I just knew that something just didn't feel right. And so the biggest thing for me, after I realized that, I was drifting away from the Lord, and it felt like empty work, to be honest. It felt like I was just on automatic, just
kind of going through the motions.
just going through the motions. The Lord really just told me to fall back and rest. And I remember I just went through a period of like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of just like inactivity, completely just getting back into that relationship and just really just seeking him again, and really just wanting to do this thing not only for him but with him.
Right.
And
it definitely is a partnership, honestly. Like sometimes, and I think it's not on purpose, but I think when we approach ministry with our worldly thinking, on our worldly mind, it's I can do this on my own. I have all these talents and abilities. I can just do everything.
Right.
And with Christ, it's like, that is probably the fastest way for someone to be broken of that, is just to walk with Christ, because he shows you it is not about you. It is not about what you can do. It's all about, will you rely completely and solely on him, for him to be your source, for him to lead you, for him to work through you, which is how, other people see God. They're not supposed to see us. They're supposed to see God in what we do. So if he's leading you and he's working through you, then whoever is clicking on your channel, whoever is listening to your podcast, they won't hear, they'll hear God,
Lord,
which is what it's all about.
Exactly. I mean, and I think even just on top of that, I really wanted to ensure that, the Lord was just really and truly at the forefront. I didn't want there to be any dispute as to what this channel at the time represents. And again, like in my mind, I think it's so important to just let people know that this wasn't supposed to be like a big thing for me. This was just a hobby. This was literally just a, oh, I'm just going to do this thing on the side really quick. I never expected it to be big. Never expected it to. Again, this was completely out of my mind. This was just a segment away from what I was doing, but also just an opportunity for me to just be obedient and to help the artists who just needed it.
So when did you find that shift occurred to where it's a hobby to, you know what, God, this is my purpose and this is a ministry? When did that change happen?
I think the change really happened after I initially reached out to Evan and Eris, and I think at the time they had released a song 2 or 3, and the songs, like, again, they were just independent artists at the time. They hadn't built anything. And I remember just reaching out to them saying, you know what, I believe in this, like this music. This music's incredible. Like, would you like to feature it on the channel? And at the time, they were just like, yeah, sure. And to see what God did with that one song, "Be Alright," which is now on, I think, 3.7 million views to this day. I think that's the first time I really realized, like, that there were more eyes than I thought.
Than what your eyes could see.
Right. That my eyes could see, or even more so, like, than what I was expecting. Like, I started to realize that as things like this, and I saw like certain artists, like maybe like a Marizu Akechi, like come from, you know, what he was doing to blowing up to where he is now, and to see artists literally grow in this space. As those things started to happen, it started to make me realize, it started to get me to realize that this platform is no longer for me. Like, and I think the biggest thing is people need to understand that this was spiritual healing for me. Because I was the person who was trying to get away from secular music. So me finding this music, me posting this music, this was a sense of really just trying to get back into pouring myself into the Lord and away from the world. So as much as it was impacting other people, like, it was such an important thing for me, which is why I think I was able to justify the every single day thing at the time, because it was always have my ears towards the Lord, always have my eyes towards the Lord each and every day. No matter what happens, I'm going to have a segment. And I actually went through this conversation with myself. I was just like, I'm going to have a segment in my life or in my day where I'm going to have to just give myself to the Lord through finding the music and posting the music. So my moment with the Lord is then. But, you know, that then stumbled to become a automatic kind of response to a channel that seemed to be growing. But it was healing for me, and to see then that, you know, other people were being edified by it. And I've never been the type of person, like, I'm super, like, up until like maybe the past year, like, I've always been super anonymous. Like, people didn't know who was running this thing. People thought it was a huge team. People think it's a whole entity. Like, and I always kind of wanted to keep it that way because, again, like you were saying, it's not about me. It's not about, you know, Tap. It's not about, you know, I never wanted people to attach a face to the platform, because it's about Jesus. Like, if anything, you know, let the music speak for itself. Like, let people find Christ through the music. You don't need another party to kind of
just
be
lead them,
exactly
to guide them.
right. That window is there
behind the scenes.
Exactly, that window is there. You don't want another layer of fog towards what they should be seeing, right? So, yeah, I always wanted to be super anonymous, again, because this was just a small thing on the side for me. But then I started to realize that, oh man, like, this is like a thing now. Like, this is something that, you know, people actually are waiting on, people are
Mm.
relying on for their daily dose of edifying music, because everyone is actually going through that. A lot of people, like a lot of Christians, and I think it's really just a testament to how big this channel has actually become over these 3 years. It's the fact that there have been so many people who have been looking for this, so many people who've been wanting to get out of the Christian space, so many people who've been wanting to pursue the Lord, so many people who've been wanting to just give themselves fully, having really just been indoctrinated through the world's music, right? So when I started to see that, oh man, like um, this isn't about me. This isn't just a small thing that I'm doing on the side. People are truly being edified by this. People are truly, really and truly seeking the Lord. That's when I realized that, you know what? For as long as we have these people here, like, let me just find more ways to bring them towards Christ. And that's when I had a real gauge of, this is my calling. This is such a passion of mine. I have such a heart for people, whether it be the artists themselves, whether it be the people listening, whether it be creatives or anyone in general. Like, and remember, we go back to my desire to help people in the Lord. Like, I
Exactly.
didn't necessarily know, Lord, how do you want me to do this? But I
He
just want
always
to.
brings it full
Exactly.
circle. Always.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this was the helping people, but then at the same time, like, I remember thinking that I wanted to be in the industry, and it's like, and I wanted to work in the music business, and it's like, it all kind of just started happening through the Lord's lens and not my own idea of how I should have been doing things, right? So one thing I made it a point to do is, for as long as we had eyes on this platform, I wanted to always ensure that we bring things back to the Word. So I remember there was just one day, I was just kind of uploading um, just the standard picture with the music playing in the background. And then there was a song that I was listening to. I can't remember which song it was, but there was a specific song um, that really spoke to me. And I was just thinking about a verse for that song. And I thought, you know what, this verse would be perfect for a song. So I remember initially I started putting the verse in the description. And then I got to a point where I was actually putting it on the video itself.
Yes.
Now, in my mind, I was thinking, like, firstly, I didn't know whether people acknowledged it. No one ever like spoke about it. It was just a thing I was doing for a while. And I thought, you know what, if anything, if someone stumbles upon this song, stumbles upon anything or stumbles upon this channel, period, then, you know what, at least they see the word of God. And even more so, I try to make the verses always applicable to the song that the people are listening to, right?
Right.
So I did that. And then there was one day where I received a comment, and someone said, and this is very much when Blessed was in its infancy, right? Someone said, if you decide to change anything about this channel, please do not change the fact that you include Bible verses. And that,
Wow.
I promise you, that comment, and I wish I could go back and find the video and find the person who actually commented. It's lost in the comments, but you know what? That moment made me realize, you know what? Like, this is how I'm gonna do it.
Right.
This is how it needs to be. People need to go back to the Bible. This music, all of this, it's not about entertainment. This is about the Lord. This is about Jesus first.
Right.
And yeah, that's really just been the forefront, especially because I kind of had an idea of where Christian music was kind of going. I really wanted something that was just unapologetically Jesus in what we were doing. So yeah, that was that. And I was going along, and then I realized that I couldn't. There were certain things that I couldn't do myself. Like, I needed help. And that's actually where you come into the equation, because I sent out it must have been a post on Instagram and YouTube, actually.
Yes.
I think you commented on the YouTube one, right?
I commented on the YouTube one. Right. So I was secretly following Blessed.
Right.
For, I think at that point, maybe it was a few months. Really? But I loved it because it always gave me those hidden gems that I never would have come across. Because like you, I will spend hours digging through
Right.
playlists and songs and finding new music. So blessed music for me was like the hidden gem that I was like, oh, thank goodness I came across this, right?
Praise the
So I
Lord.
secretly replied, and but I remember when I think we first talked, like we just literally just
Oh
talked.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, and that was
Exactly.
probably the best part about everything was
Exactly.
that, you know, and it's like you said previously, is that conversations matter,
For sure.
and conversations with other creators
Mm.
matter. And it's not just about them giving you something that you
Yeah.
need at the time. It's about how can we again edify the body of Christ? How can we go through this journey called life together? And I think that's something that gets lost
Yeah.
nowadays. It's just
For sure.
fulfilling a need.
What can you do for me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what can you do for me that will, you know, advance me to the next level or
Yeah.
allow me to take another step?
Yeah.
And I feel like you spearheading Blessed has kind of brought back that focus of let's actually talk to each other and let's actually get to know each other.
Yeah.
So I thank God for that. And I thank God
Nice.
for your
So do
life,
I.
for,
That's all
you know,
Jesus. That's all
for
Jesus.
working through you through that,
Praise the
which is
Lord.
amazing.
Yeah, so I had a couple of people who were just working on a couple of things, whether it be the clothing aspect of it. I had a friend of mine from university who was keen to get started in there. We had curators such as Rocky, who was just helping out, curate some incredible playlists over the years. And I think, yeah, there was a sense of understanding that there were people helping out, but I started to realize within myself that I was struggling with this idea of, now that I think about it, of really just letting go to what I had created. Right. And I know, like, you know, and that's the fleshy side of me, really just thinking that it was me. Right.
Yeah.
And it was because this platform was just so personal to me.
It was your baby. It was
Right.
your thing you literally created from nothing, right? Like
Exactly.
just it
Right.
was an idea and you did it. And then from that to watch it grow, I mean, it's the same thing probably our mothers experienced. Like they created us, they gave birth to
Absolutely.
us, watched us grow, and now it's time for us to leave the house.
Exactly
And they're
that.
just like, no, but I need you to stay. Too much, like it's not. We're not ready yet.
That's it, you know. And my mom tells me to, like, for as long as we've been here, my mom's just been really helping out with a couple of things, and she's been advising me and telling me that, yeah, you need to just let this child grow, like, and go out there and grow. And it's so funny because, like, so at the time, like, this must have been like 2 years, like, people were helping out, and people were in and out. Like, I understand that also people had other lives, they had other commitments. It was very much international. People could only help where they could. So in my mind, I always kind of assumed that, like, I could just do it on my own. Like, again, I came from a jack of all trades mentality. I was able to pick up so many different skills very fast and execute them. So I thought, you know what, like, no one's really gonna truly love this thing like I do. And I had certain things in my mind, and I was trying to kind of map them out exactly how I saw them. So I realized that I was just, yeah, I just took over and I was doing my thing, and I was filling these different gaps where people were in or out, etc. But I always knew that I was the almost nucleus or constant, where people could be in and out, etc. So that was great at the time. Not really, to be honest, now that I think about it, because, you know, there was a mental aspect of that, right? You can't
Right.
take up all of those things on your own, and we're not told to do any of these things, like, you know, build a ministry on our own, and to really just, you know,
To bear the weight
Yeah,
of it all.
no, not at all, not at
We were
all.
not made for that.
No, not at all. And it's so funny because it's like, um, there's me thinking like, I've got it all sorted. Like I can do it on my own. Like I've done it. Like I did it for so long. But you know what? For as long as these numbers were growing, like it was getting more and more difficult. Like,
Mm,
and actually just recently, just yesterday, like I was telling you that I had burnt out like completely when we were supposed to do this, and I had one of those moments of just feeling incredibly overwhelmed, putting on too many hats, and not allowing for just new perspective and other people who are just more energized and willing to do certain things to just happen. So I think that's the biggest struggle that I've had with this platform, this idea of letting go, giving this thing completely to the Lord, and also learning to trust people,
mm,
um, to really just take this to new levels. I never want to be the reason why this platform has or has growth that is stunted.
right.
um,
Right.
and I want to see it flourish because this is all to glorify God. This is not about me. This is not about Tap and what he's looking like. Again, I'm happy to go anonymous for as long as possible because I don't care about the accolades, but it was
Exactly.
more so just having built this thing. Will people love it? Will people be committed to it as much as or nearly as much as I am? And can I just trust? Can I let go and can I trust people to really um, just help out? So, that being said, there are a couple of people who offered and extended themselves to help along. And again, I just need to pray because you need to pray for the right people too.
Yep.
It's not a case of people just filling in gaps for the sake
Absolutely.
of it. It's, do we have the same mentality? Do we have the same desire? Do we have the same desire to serve? Do we have the same desire to be obedient to the Lord? Like, what does your relationship with the Lord look like? Understand that these are built on solid foundations of Christ. And, there's certain things that, we cannot deviate from. So, um, yeah, it's been tough for me. I also need a time to decompress. I need time with the Lord, which means that it's quintessential for me to be in a place where I'm able to delegate to people and just
Absolutely.
have them help out in that space. But yeah, it started like that. It was just a small thing, posting music, reaching out to artists, developing relationships, and growing together. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of these artists who were small have now flourished into
I mean,
incredible.
I've seen it myself where
You've seen
it's
it,
like,
right?
you see these artists releasing a single and then they
Mm-hmm.
release an EP and then it's a full
Mm,
album. So
right,
literally some of these artists that I secretly am like rooting for, I'm like,
right,
I've seen your progression and the trajectory, but
right.
also the growth, which I think
Yeah.
is probably the best part is like when
Mm,
it's like you've seen someone at the beginning and it's like obviously there's talent
right,
and there's giftings, but then you also see what God is doing and how he's pouring into them and
right.
how he's causing them to grow and flourish. Like that
Yeah.
part
Oh
is
man.
secretly, it's
You know
it's
it.
so sweet.
It
It's the
is.
one thing I can say. It's so sweet when it's like, wow, God is really blessing you. I love that.
Yeah, it's just so incredible to see. And it feels like it's a win for everyone really, because these are brothers and sisters in Christ. And we all, like I said, we all have the same goal. And it's like, okay,
Exactly.
we're winning. And for these artists, like I just want to say, you know, props for what they do, to really just step out and do things unapologetically for the Lord in a space where, people on the surface who aren't doing secular work just don't flourish financially
It's
as
difficult.
well. It's difficult, right? It's difficult for an independent artist, period, but let alone a specific or a Christian independent artists, it becomes even more difficult. So I just want to thank the artists for their obedience, in the midst of that, taking on other jobs, while still doing the music thing on the side, while still being obedient to their calling, and providing music for a generation that needs to hear it.
And a generation that is yearning for it. I honestly feel like this generation is yearning for a message that is deep, a yearning for a message that has substance, and for people who are willing to open themselves up as well. I mean, this generation is talking about things that I don't think our parents would have been so open to talk about. I mean, real, honest struggles, day-to-day struggles that we all face, but sometimes we may share them with our close circle or with our friends, but it's hard to be so transparent, which is odd in a social media era or time, I guess. But remember, there's filters. There's I'm going to show 5% of me that is good and happy, whereas some of these artists are just so open and honest, but also it shows that God is honestly working in them, that God is transforming them, and his grace is allowing them to be transparent. Like his grace is allowing them to be so open. I know I don't have the grace within me to be open about certain things. It's honestly the grace of God.
It's easier to just hide, right? And then to put on a show and act like you're a certain person. And then, even for me, like I think one of the biggest things that I struggled with is always just asking the Lord, well, up until maybe recently, but even sometimes just having moments of asking the Lord, like, Lord, why did you choose me to do this? Like
why me of all people? Why me?
Why me? Because like I wasn't proficient in the Bible. Like I don't. There's still so much that I don't know. Like I'm growing, but there's still so much of me that there was a lot of unrepentant sin that I had to repent of. Like I still fall many times, and I think going into this, I put an unrealistic expectation of myself to be perfect in the eyes of the people I was with, because I was in charge of a Christian platform. And I think I really wrestled with that mentally. And at the same time, it did help me in my growth, and understanding that, what, this is important. Like I need to grow as an individual. I need to know the Lord. It's not even just it's not a side thing. It's never a side thing, period. But even more so now, because, the Lord has given you this platform. And, when people talk about the followers or subscribers, etc., we want to just talk about these numbers. But the real question is, like, are you prepared for these numbers? As an artist, are you prepared to receive those numbers? Because exactly, do you have the capacity? Because, these people, for as long as I do not direct these people to the Lord, then they are susceptible to making this platform an idol, them as Christian musicians an idol, and then you fall into the same space of the secular artist, right? So it's so important to ensure that we continue to point people to Christ throughout this whole journey. Like there's no deviating from that. We did not receive these gifts. We did not receive these blessings on our own. Like this was all given to us from the Lord. And we need to be glorifying him in every single space.
Which also brings us to something that I definitely want to get into, is working with others and, working. I would say it's easy in an social media age or the internet age to work with other people. But can you talk about kind of with Blessed and collaborating with other creatives, what that looks like for you?
Very good question. What that looks like for me, I would say it's significantly easy, especially when you've had those conversations that extend beyond just the creative outlet itself. You know, when it becomes very interpersonal, when it becomes let me know your story, let me understand you, let me pray for you, let me reach out. Um, let me reach out to see how you're doing. You know, let's fellowship, like let's read the word in some cases. In this digital space, like it really just allows for especially working with Christians, it's been incredibly fun because it feels like every single interaction that I have is authentic. Um, it's a real kind of stripped down moment, and then it's really you understanding me, me understanding you. And from a platform perspective, it's, you know, how best can we kind of be a springboard towards what the Lord is doing for your life? I know you personally now, like I know your story. How best can we craft your story to be able to get it out there so that God may be glorified? And you know, it's been great. It's been very wholesome. There's no animosity. It becomes so surreal for me to see uh, brothers and sisters collaborating who I know personally and I've spoken to personally on separate occasions. But the fact that they found each other to be able to collaborate, and then even just having it featured on the platform, it's almost as if this is really just an expression of the body. Like this is an expression of us as brothers and sisters. And this is what collaboration looks like. And it doesn't feel like competition, you know. It doesn't, because it's like, you know, we all have our own purpose that the Lord has given us. The Lord has given us a myriad or plethora of talents, and it's just uplifting one another, you know. But I don't want to completely almost romanticize it and say that there aren't any kind of occasions of friction. Like there are some cases where, you know, people will almost expect something from the platform, either because they've been featured before, or you know, just because, you know, they see artists that don't have or haven't had don't have a a name, or kind of come out of nowhere, kind of get featured on the platform. There might be in some cases a feeling of being entitled because maybe you have a greater following than the next person, etc. So that kind of happens, but it's very, very rarely. And again, it's just about kind of clarifying things. You know, here the biggest thing with Bless is, and I stay true to this, and it will forever be like this. We're not going Hollywood on anyone. This isn't going to be a whole big corporation like of, you know, the world's subsidiary of that. Nothing. No one's going to buy this thing out. Period. It's a case of I've always been invested, and that's why I really love this. I've always been invested in ensuring that, for the most part, you know, although you're familiar with some artists that are featured on the platform, I always want to ensure that you don't know the artists who are featured. I always want to ensure that we continue to go back to those SoundCloud roots of finding those artists who have who have maybe 1, 2, 3 subscribers or followers,
Right.
who are just making great quality Jesus inspired music, who just need a platform, and that will be blessed forever. It'll never be a case where, you know, we have all these artists now, we're going to exist in this space where everyone's familiar. It's whoever you are in this world, as long as you're making it to glorify the Lord, and as long as it's quality, you know, you always have a shot. You always
Right.
have a shot.
That's how God calls us. He doesn't
Mm,
call us based on what we've done before,
mm,
or, you know, who we knew before. He calls
yeah.
us because he's because A, he knows our heart. He knows that ultimately we are thirsting and yearning for him. And he,
Mm,
I can use you, I can mold you. And it doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't
yeah,
matter what your background is, what the color of your skin is, how many
exactly.
subscribers you have. It all of that at the end of the day means nothing. It's your
No,
heart, because God looks at the heart
exactly.
of the man.
Exactly. And I think for me, I came into this Christian music industry like I have no like kind of emotional ties to artists. Like I didn't grow up listening to the music. I just see what I see and I hear what I hear. So there was never going to be a case where someone who was of higher stature comes to me and says, you know what, this is me. This is my no. That's not going to happen ever, because yeah, like, I understand we are all brothers and sisters in Christ, and we all have equal opportunity, because we're all doing it to glorify God. There's no, you can't you can't coerce, or kind of not even coerce, but you can't even get enter the space with worldly expectation or worldly tactics. It doesn't work here. Um, I just want to know where your heart is. Like, I just want to know, just what you're really trying to, what's the inspiration for the song? Like, how did God inspire this? Like, take us through the intricacies. Like, let me know your heart. Like, that's what I want to know. It's not about accolades or anything like that. Which is why it's kind of surprising for me to this day, because the channel's grown substantially. Like, I could never imagine that. But like, people will come to me and say they're so um, they're so incredibly grateful um, for getting featured on the platform. And to me, it's like, I still had the mentality of, this is just like that platform that I just do. Like, it's not even like, it's not a big thing. It's a big thing, but it's not a big thing. It's not big enough to be giving me any kind of praise. Like, it's literally just what it's always been, except I guess on a greater scale.
These are the conversations that we typically have. Like,
exactly, right? There's just microphones in front of us now.
that's all we do. We just roll in our conversations. But the one thing I do want to touch on before we go is, what can people look forward to from Blessed? We have the YouTube platform, but what can people can you give a glimpse into what people can expect going forward?
Sure. I think in this season, or not even in this season, just as things have been going, and as I've been getting to know a lot of people and hearing a lot of testimonies, and also falling in love with film, I really have a desire to, and all God willing, as things progress, also post COVID, how things kind of come together, I really just have a desire to get into cinematography and getting into documentary work, to really just tell the story of these artists, of these creatives, of just believers at the same time. Like, let's not even limit it there. Like, I just want to really bring an element of just transparency, clarity, and also just vulnerability. That can be seen through the listeners or the watcher's eyes. I want people to fall in love with the God who all of these people are falling in love with. I want people to really know Jesus through all of these testimonies. I think one thing about the music industry in the past was the fact that there was a lot of anonymity, in a sense, because you kind of saw this person as that person and you didn't really know too much about them. But in this case, like, I really want there to be a new level of transparency as believers. And I think that's through storytelling. So I'm really, really committed to cinematography again. Like, I really want to make this thing look like cinema. I don't want it to look like just a video. I'm so obsessed with that idea, because I think telling a story and making it look like a story instead of just someone who videoed something is something so beautiful to me. So definitely dipping into the documentary field of things, God willing. I guess all of these things I'm going to preface with God willing, because I don't know where he wants to take this. But second thing would probably be shows. We were meant to do a show this summer, but then COVID. So we were planning a show in London. A friend of mine, Demi, who's just a part of helping out with all of this. And I remember a lady came to us and she was telling us, we were actually in a coffee shop. She was telling us that she was just kind of concerned about this COVID thing. And we were just like, nah, it's cool. Like, nah, it's fine. It's not that bad. Like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And then next thing you know, you
Here we
know.
are in quarantine.
We're all in quarantine, the whole world. But yeah, definitely looking to get a show going here in London, and also one anticipating to have one in Paris, and then from then on, we're really trying to dip into the US and Canada too.
Yeah,
Yeah. And to be fair, everywhere we really like the Africa space, Nigeria, South Africa, even Kenya, and then just everywhere. Like it's really trying to go global, but I think we're gonna start local. We're gonna start in London, Paris, and then really just look towards America, um, and the US. Oh, sorry, the US and Canada, um, and then we'll see from there because we also want to have a show in Brazil because the people who support us, like Brazilians, seem to be. I think in terms of actual analytics, they might be the second country that watches that follows this the most.
shout out
Uh,
to Brazil.
Yeah, shout out to Brazil. Shout out to all these people. I've never seen such a patriotic country in my life. The amount of Brazilian flags I see in the comments all the time, I'm just like, you guys are really representing. So I'd love to be able to do a show in Brazil. In terms of just kind of what's going on practically right now, I'm looking towards building a website that's actually in production right now or development right now. A website so that we have like a home base that exists outside of YouTube. YouTube is very volatile, the ups and downs. We just want to ensure that, you know what, when the YouTube goes, if the YouTube goes, at least, Bless can still stay intact. And also, we want to provide opportunities for people who are interested in writing blogs, people who are interested in reviewing albums, people who are interested in all of those things to just have a platform to do so. And on top of that, the store, the merchandise will also exist. I know people have been talking about this for the longest time, and there have been so many contributing factors. But the biggest thing with me too is like I've always wanted to put out quality. I've always wanted to ensure that people are really getting value for their money and really trying to set strong foundations. So I've been I've been partnering up with a company that does ethical clothing. That does, that's vegan and is a fair trade. And we really want to kind of build strong foundations with the things that we put out. So that's in, and I'm actually wearing one of the hoodies now. But yeah, that should be up by the end. Again, I don't know.
God willing.
Yeah.
He knows the plans, and in the appointed time, he will allow for these doors to be opened and allow for the products to be launched. And at that time
Precisely.
and in that season, it'll be the perfect time. So God
Precisely.
willing.
God willing. God willing. And then I think the final bit is really trying to move towards building up the Blessed Collective. So really just bringing creatives. Well, firstly, like the label aspect of things. So having a formal, I guess, label under the Blessed name, and having specific artists that we feel
Major, by the way.
yeah, that it's big.
Yeah.
It's big. So a couple of people in mind. Currently, the first person on it who's been with Blast for such a long time is one of the producers, Andre, brother of mine, who came out with his debut single, "Blessed," which was incredible. He's got some stuff along the way, but yeah, as things go on, things will come into fruition. And then the collective aspect of it, like I've also been so invested in this idea of just bringing together creatives. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the music space. I know Blessed Music is Blessed Music, but we really want to exist within other creative avenues, like literal like artistry, like painters, graphic designers, etc., who can do who just want to create and really just extend their gifting, and create something that hasn't been seen before.
Right.
We want to work with photographers who just capture these incredible moments, and who I've been called by God to do things in the photography space, as well as just cinematographers and people who can represent Blessed in other different avenues to be able to extend it and make it more of a creative collective as opposed to exclusively music, although that's where our home is.
I think a lot of the times when we say creative or I'm a creator,
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, you're a singer or you're a rapper or something like that to do with music.
Yeah.
But within art, there are so many different media. There's so many different subsections that I feel like don't get the proper love.
Exactly. Even like dancers,
Yes.
like Alex Lugo, like he's an incredible creative in the dance that he's been doing for so long. And when I talk about merchandise, I know we talk about like Blessed, like merchandise, but like I'm also very what's it called? I'm very passionate about collaborating with like other Christian graphic designers, like who can come up with incredible designs, and I want it to be collaboration. I don't want it to be this is what Blessed came up with and then kind of put someone to the side. I want someone to come up and really, so people can really see what the Lord is doing with this individual. So yeah, really stressing this idea of collaboration and really bringing to light what the Lord is doing within all the different creative avenues, not just the music itself.
Absolutely. I love that. There is much that is on the horizon for Blessed. And as we say, God willing, may He open every door that needs to be opened, and may He continue to inspire you, and may He continue to speak life into you and over you and lead you into leading this platform. So last thing before we go is, where can people connect with Blessed Music? Just remind them where they can connect with you.
The best way to connect with Blessed is through Instagram, probably Instagram DMs. And then if you're an artist wanting to submit music, we actually transition the submissions from email to a website called Submit Hub. So if you go into any of the music that we currently have, at the bottom in the description, there is a link to the Submit Hub so that everything's kind of just in order and we can see submissions as they come. But yeah, you can contact and submit your music through Submit Hub. In terms of just contacting in general, that comes through Instagram or email at blessedmusicgroup@gmail.com. Instagram, blessed, BLSSD_music. And then Submit Hub you can find through YouTube, or just go onto a YouTube channel, find out some of the, just discover some of the artists that we feature. And you can find us through all of the links that we have posted below. But SoundCloud, Spotify, anywhere, everywhere. I'm sure there's some of Blessed there.
Thank you again for listening to the Lampstand Chronicles on our very first episode. Thanks again to Tep for joining me on this one. You can connect with me on Instagram at Rocky Saint Amand. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Lampstand Chronicles, which is available on all major streaming platforms. And in whatever you do, may your light shine bright. Take care, everyone.